Oh, okay. Wherever I say it out, I'll quote you on it.
Please do.
I am hearing the voice of my very good friend Enoch, and he has this note where he says, forget about the external environment and then look within, like look internally, and just find the solutions. I think it's quite motivational, and it's like a hope for sale sort of thing. Look inside the organization, ask the hard questions, and win. It's challenging times, but find a way to win. Okay, all right then. We will find a way to win, and make strategy, formulate strategy in that manner. Like I was saying, what I'm hearing a lot is that the change needed is more mental to me. It seems that a new way of looking. It's like we are in this shell that we need to break out of and see things differently and approach things differently. Just think completely. This mindset shift. Um, I mean, in your positions, in your experience, I'm wondering how, but like in most small businesses, they are very resistant to change. Right. So how do you begin to approach that conversation, especially when the CEO or the owner managers, the leaders themselves are not even open to new models of thinking?
Corporate governance.
Corporate governance. What is this? Is it the investment bankers, you guys love corporate governance so much that it's genuinely good for the business because they'll be like, wait, this corporate governance, I'm not doing any corporate governance and I'm making good money. My business is doing well anyway.
So, so the difference here is that you're not doing any corporate governance. You're making a million or two every year. Now introduce that and you transform your business, your money making ability from 2 to 5 to 10, just because you've got different perspective, you've got different ways of thinking about things in the business going forward.
In addition, you're also safeguarding yourself against unexpected headwinds. So, corporate, if you have good corporate governance, whoever you have in there has preempted or has put in safeguards in case of any sort of
Let's take an
unexpected headwinds.
example. You're an SME. Give me a business.
I'll give you an example. Before that, I want you to, what corporate governance or an SME ask you, what 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 is all this fast? What is it? Corporate governance. I don't want to go and ask my lawyer about it. We'll talk too much. He or she will talk too much. What is corporate governance? But the case in point for you, think of a company with 25 staff, 25 staff, um, into as an industry in the industrial products. So imports, adds value, do a bit of manufacturing, and then supplies to the market, right? So mining supports services, mining support supplies, mining supports, products. Imports, adds value, and sells to 25 staff, doing pretty well. Annual turnover, well, I wouldn't want to disclose that, but annual turnover is big enough to put them into the medium to large size business. Definitely six figures.
So, corporate governance in that scenario is how the business is run from strategy from the top all the way down to the minutest detail. Okay, it encompasses all of that. We're talking what is the vision and direction that the business is going. How are you managing your risks? How are you anticipating changes in the market, changes to your competitive landscape, changes to your regulatory landscape, changes to the business itself, how you're anticipating all of that. If you don't have that kind of framework in place, it's always difficult to grow. Like I said, you may be making 2 million today. You continue making that 2 million if you're not thinking about the future. Being able to think about the future, if it's just a two-man business, is going to be always challenging. You're going to get burnout. That's why you bring in resources to assist. That's why you create the board of directors. Okay, the board of directors is not just there for because I'm a shareholder, I must have a board. No, there's a particular board actually sets the tone and direction of the business and the strategy for the business, and ensures that it's being implemented by management.
The cost of corporate governance, I'm from the theoretical perspective, you say it's justified, but that a going concern, a business, the example you gave, man, the husband and wife directors, the husband and wife, the only shareholders. If they want to transition into corporate governance, the cost, these new members that are going to be on the board, how do I remunerate them?
There are two ways. I'll give you an example. You can adopt the advisory board approach where the people who are doing it are, again, like bootstrapping. They are contributing their time because they buy into the vision that you are trying to build. They buy into the business, the idea you've put together. They just know that, one, you cannot either afford them on a formal basis or on a full-time basis, and therefore they contribute their time on an ad hoc basis to help guide you. That's the advisory board approach. Then you've got a substantive board approach where you hire them and put them on a full-time basis on your board, and then they pursue the business's objectives on your behalf.
And just to add to that, and some insights on how to, populate your advisory board. It's always very important to take individuals from different walks of life and different industries. So it's always helpful to have a finance person, for instance. Someone's also in that industry, somebody who has maybe government relations, and that sort of gives a more rounded approach.
Yes.
So
you notice that with what Yomi has just described to you, what you realize is that you might not have let's say a professional finance person as your finance manager. Maybe you've got a bookkeeper, but you've got on your board, an advisory board, or on your substantive board, somebody who has a finance background. They are maybe a qualified or a professional accountant. They're able to provide guidance from that level down into your business without you having to pay an arm and leg for it.
Two words come to mind listening to this: trust and transparency. To what extent can I really trust these guys and then bring them to be part of the governance and the transparency? Most owner managers that I know, listen, I like the fact that I have the checkbook in my letterbox, can bring out and sign wherever I want. I want to go on a holiday, I can sign the check. Why do I put all of these structures in place for people to know? And in Ghana, it's like people don't even want to employ from their church because they will know how wealthy I am. Everyone wants to keep how wealthy they are. So why then do I open up and bring all of these people on board? They know how wealthy I am, and then they are now going to come and ask me for money, and then we come into me with all sorts of problems. So trust, transparency. How do you navigate that?
If you're not transparent, how are you going to grow?
Exactly. I was what my question. I was going to flip the
If you
question
don't want to be
back and
transparent,
say,
how are you going to grow?
how do you want to grow?
So I mean, you have to.
So if you can't tell me what you want to do or where you want to be as an advisory board member, how am I going to help you with the ideas that I have, or the experience I already have, or the contacts that I have? I've been in business for the last 15 years. Now, if I pick my Rolodex, I can actually pick up a phone and call anybody across many industries to ask for assistance, a favor, or insights.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you put me on your board, that's what you're gaining access to, my contact book, before my experience and expertise. Okay, now if you're not going to be transparent with me with what you want to do, let's say you are a steel importing business or manufacturing business. Okay, I can pick up the phone right now and give a phone call to a number of commodities brokers who can help you with pricing your steel imports better than what you're currently doing. I can pick up a phone and call a host of banks to tell them that, look, this company is importing XYZ goods or steel products. They need to hedge the price of steel. Please help them with that. How are you going to do that? That's risk management for you. But if you're not going to be transparent with me to tell me what you're doing, you're not going to get the benefit of the relationship.
I think it's more cultural, right? It's, for me, I try to blend the theoretical knowledge with the cultural context. This CEO wants to be able to dip into the finances. Listen, my wife's sister's husband needs this money for the funeral. I want to give it. Why do I have to go to the board?
So we start from even a position of law, right? From the company's code. The company is an entity on its own, separate from its owners. Once you create a company, it has a life of its own. Okay, now believe it or not, when you take the company's checkbook and you spend out of it the way you feel you want to spend out of it, you're actually stealing. That's the
Or you would
reality.
run into trouble.
You run into trouble because you are stealing from the company. But I mean, it's lucky, you're lucky that the shareholders and the board is yourself. That's why you don't put yourself in trouble. But realistically speaking, you are actually stealing from the company by doing it that way. And you create the board to serve as checks and balances on that corporate entity that has a life on its own. Now, this mindset thing you're talking about, the sooner we start thinking about businesses living beyond ourselves, the better we'll be to position them to succeed. I see Sarpong Capital today as a business that must live beyond me. Okay, if I die, drop dead tomorrow and I'm gone, or if I no longer am interested in the business and I walk away, but then its employees are here, that business must be able to survive on its own without my involvement. Okay, that's the mindset I have. So every decision that's taken is aimed at ensuring that it lives for 100 years, 200 years. Okay, if you don't have that mind, we've got to start developing that mindset. And I know it's a cultural thing. The cultural thing is, I did it, it's for me. Media, sorry.
I understand.
I'm going to leave it to my children. Okay, it's a cultural thing. I agree, but we've got to transition away from that way of thinking. If we're looking at building businesses in Ghana that live beyond the owners or the founders and are also positioned to compete globally and outside of the country.
Just to also add to that, I think it's also a function of, if you want your business to thrive, you have to introduce certain policies in place. Now, taking away from the whole cultural factor, there's ways you can estimate your annual expenditure and work it in such a way that the CEO's remuneration from the company account encompasses that, beyond which we can't accommodate it, just to ensure that the business continues to thrive. So it's putting a figure to the CEO owner's remuneration for annually, and sort of working it that way and being accountable to that to ensure that you're not just running the business dry, literally.
That self-discipline is a big concern. My friend I mentioned earlier has a whole course on soft skills development. I think discipline, is a big part of it as a CEO, because to have a million sit in your bank account and not go and blow it on lifestyle when you are the ultimate point in the business is a big deal. But all I'm hearing, it makes me wonder the approach to financial management that SMEs should be aiming at. Should they be more transparent? That's what I'm hearing. Should they be more conservative? The answer I'm hearing so far is it depends. Generally, how are we to manage the finances? Getting a professional, I think, is one. Submitting yourself to corporate governance structures is another. And there's discipline that you need. Is there anything else that so far maybe we've not highlighted that you guys want to bring on?
Well, in terms of managing a business's finance, we've had this conversation where I keep saying questions, and you've always got to ask those questions. Where is your cash flow coming from? To even begin to want to manage it, you need to know where the money is coming from, and you need to know where you're spending it. Okay, so to manage it, first and foremost, let's know how much are we bringing in and how much are we spending or sending out in terms of expenditure, and what's left. That tells you what you need to do to manage it. Then it gives you the opportunity to ask additional questions surrounding how do we either reduce what is going out or how do we increase what is coming in. That's also part of management as well. It's not what's left that you are just managing. It's how do you tweak the two levers there, plus the inflows and the outflows. So managing it is really a part of it. It's asking those questions, having the professionals, having the corporate governance, and also because you have the professionals and because you have the corporate governance, you're able to also ask the questions and then take action that is required to manage it more efficiently.
You also should make provision frequently. It could be annually or every 2 years, to have an independent external party to come in and look through your books and point out any problems that they might see. It might be difficult in the context of what you're saying.
Yes,
That's why I said
at a
you
few.
have to make provision. So can the Christmas party be scaled down, for instance, to make provision for certain things? Yes, because ultimately it ensures that your business continues to be in existence for longer.
Vision has been one of the things close to my heart recently, because I'm finding out that CEOs of SMEs need to have a vision that's more transgenerational, a vision aimed at purpose and impact and a legacy, right? Now, they get it mostly, and they're like, listen, I formulate this amazing vision, and it's like I'm the only one that is concerned about it. I'd like to hear your thoughts on people management, talent acquisition, capacity development internally, because I feel like you guys have a very um, broad view, a broad and detailed view on the context. So, from that perspective, how do you think internally the SME should be doing it? People management, talent acquisition, scaling up, upscaling our people.
No, I was going to say that there's so many, and in the back of my mind, I have the whole financial constraints factor. And there's so many resources. We live in a world where there's so many resources on the internet. There are ways you can upskill at various levels, using resources. There's so many associations and agencies that would be happy to handhold or mentor staff if you're starting from that. And you do have to invest in training. It's inevitable. But I'm saying, to bridge the gap between funding for training, there are resources available. Talent acquisition, on the other hand, there are universities you can go to actually just set up a stand there, speak to the students. You have to continuously engage people, network, get referrals, but you have to put yourself out there. The talent isn't just going to come to you when you're sitting. And you also have to know that when you start to build, so there's a bit of a synergy. When you start to build a business that looks good, people will want to work there. People will want to come and add value to it. So there's a synergy. So you do your part, but also you need to empower people on the training front.
And to add on to Yomi made mention of engagement. Now, your question was around why a founder has set the vision and they seem to be the only person concerned about it. If insufficient levels of engagement is not happening within the organization, then it's only going to be the CEO that seems to be concerned about the vision. I think that's the obvious challenge that a lot of SMEs and even large corporates may face when there's insufficient engagement on the vision of the business or the organization within the various ranks of the business.
Right. So involve the staff more, engage them on the overall direction and the vision to an extent that they can take ownership of it.
Yes, of course. The way in which the vision is communicated, it determines how people buy into it or not. Okay. If you say you want to be the number one steel manufacturer in Ghana, okay, how you communicate that internally will determine whether people will buy into it or not. And then the things that you do to actually promote or encourage or to demonstrate that that is where you're going also determines how people own it. But invariably as well, empowering people. When you empower people within the organization, they become more accountable for their decision making. When you are the founder and you are the only one who controls all the power, yes, they'll say, boss, whatever you say. Yes, and when you have boss, whatever you say, okay, that is a clear example of there not being any empowerment in the business, there not being any accountability at any level below the founder, and then there not being anybody buying into the vision. They say, whatever you say, boss.
I know one business that was, I tried power sharing and then I regret it.
Empowering people is different from power sharing.
Okay.
They are two different things.
You tease out the subtle differences.
Yeah, because when you say power sharing, it's like decision-making capabilities. But of course, there are decision-making levels within every organization. Empower people who need to be empowered at the right level to do things. If somebody is accountable for a production floor, empower him at the production floor to take decisions relating to production floor. Anything beyond the actual production activity and maybe involving capital spend relating to the production floor, then he kicks it up to somebody else who makes that decision on how to spend or allocate capital resources to change the production floor. But certainly empower him. He should be able to decide how to reject impaired products or do quality assurance rejection without having to involve senior managers. And there's a standard operating procedure around production quality. Okay, does the quality meet the minimum standard? If it does, it goes to the next stage. If it doesn't, he's empowered to get rid of it.
I've empowered them so many times.
Now, when you empower them to get rid of it, of course, there's always going to the problem where it actually hits the quality, but because of fraudulent behavior, will decide to even send things that are of high quality to the low quality so that they can go and do whatever it is. That's an integrity issue.
Right.
That is an integrity issue.
Another big concern in our space.
But that's an integrity issue that seems to be, it's misaligned with the vision. When you misalign your integrity with the vision, there has to be integrity somewhere in your vision.
I've empowered them so many times, but it seems I'm still the only one that's concerned. That's what somebody would say. And another thing is, this integrity thing you mentioned, there's a common notion floating around that in this space, entrepreneurial ethics has to be amoral. Because if you want to do it cleanly, legitimately, it's just, so I'll give an example. So why should I pay company income tax? What am I getting from the government to do it? For some, and I'm saying based on what I've heard, for some they'll say, right, the leaders corrupt, absconding funds, not being good custodians of the public funds. So why should I keep putting more money into it? So it tackles our bodies on the integrity and the vision, right? If I'm going to be unethical but conform legally, and then my business will survive. The end will justify the means. So what's
that business wouldn't survive for very long, I can tell you that, because
I've been doing it for 27 years. That's how I've kept alive.
it's illegal.
Well, so it's an interesting one. It's a very interesting. There are nuances to the question, and yes, it is breaking the law across many fronts. But you see, part of why I've been harping on corporate governance is part of this integrity issue. My integrity may be low, but if I have a board and their integrity is at a higher level than myself, they will force me to do things with integrity. Right. That's why I talk about corporate governance. However, if their integrity is also in question, then again, the tone at the top drives the activity and tone all the way down to the bottom. So if there's lacking integrity at even the board level or the corporate governance level, it will permeate throughout every aspect of the business. And like she said, that business doesn't survive for very long.
I'll give an example. So this is the case in mind. The business would make this argument that, listen, you want us to get a board, do all this corporate governance stuff. I get it. We will do it. But our competitors will not do it. The industry is partially regulated. So we will do corporate governance, we'll do all the compliance stuff and tick all of the boxes and rack up our costs. They wouldn't do it, they are low, and then they outbid us and they are winning business. Why should I run myself to become not competitive?
You're very right, and that's what ethical dilemmas, where ethical dilemmas really come from, and you've got to really be able to make the hard decisions and the hard choices. But you're right. If you don't do, your competitors are not doing it, but you doing it means your business is going to be more expensive or you'll be outbid. So then that goes back to that question of asking whether you ought to be in that business to begin with.
So that it becomes an economic question.
Do you need to be?
be in that business.
If you can't be, do your business with integrity
And be competitive.
and be
Why are you
competitive,
there?
then why are you there? That then becomes the question that you start asking yourself whether you need to continue. If it's at variance with your ethical principles,
Right.
then are you there? Why should you be there? Maybe
To be competitive and profitable, then why are you there? But the money is good, you know. The money is good. The money is good. It pays the bills, takes care of the family, affords my lifestyle. Everyone is doing it.
But then if you can still afford to live a lifestyle and be ethical, why choose the other way?
It helps me to take my children to the expensive schools and my neighbors taking their children.
so. Then we start asking, what are the priorities?
Yes.
So if your priority is taking your children to the most expensive school when theoretically you can't really afford it, right? Then you can realize that your ethical dilemma you're having is aligned with your priorities, your misaligned priorities to begin with. So when your priorities are misaligned, it's easy to go the unethical route.
And don't get us wrong, there are ways to ensure you have these processes in place without ramping up your costs exponentially. That would put you at such a disadvantage compared to your competitors. They're just tweaks that need to be made, which is why I said one needs to critically look at one's priorities, like he said, and see where to reallocate resources. What are you looking at? Are you looking at short-term money, or are you looking at longevity of the business?
Okay. Winning in challenging times. Marketing and sales is difficult now. I'm dealing with a lot of businesses. They are struggling to make a sale, but they have to still keep on spending on marketing. But it's difficult to make a sale when they struggle to make the sale and the invoice, they are not being paid on time. Okay, so how do you win in such challenging times? I want to really borrow from your optimism. What's about how are you guys doing the marketing? Is it that you are sitting on some pot of gold that you're not telling us? Because it seems to be, I say that the optimism of comfort is different from the optimism of desperation. I'm guessing majority of the people I know would say, no, these guys you're speaking with, there's a pot of gold under their seats. Marketing sales difficult. We're not making the sale. When we make the sale, they're not paying us on time. How do we approach marketing and sales in these challenging times?
So when it comes to marketing and sales, you again have to take a few steps back and go back to the questions that I was talking about earlier on. When you're asking yourself, winning in challenging times, you're asking, who is my customer today? Has my customer changed over the last 6 months? How have they been affected by the current climate? Okay, I'm being affected by the current climate. They must be affected by the current climate. So how are they being affected? Okay, what segment do those customers lie in? Are there any other segments that I'm not aware of? Okay, so these are all questions because you've got to identify who your customer is in any particular climate. Okay, when the good times are there, everybody is my customer. When the bad times roll in, not everybody is my customer. It's a fact. There are some customers that I cannot rely on in a bad time because they are probably worse hit than I am, given where they are or what it is I'm supplying to them. Okay, but there are others who are weathering it just as much as well as maybe I may be weathering it or even better than myself. Maybe I want to focus on them for the time being and pivot away from them. It means loss of market share. Yes, you can lose market share, but in the grand scheme of things, sometimes losing market share is good if you can bring your cost down to match that drop in market share as well.
strategically conceiving, knowing what you are willing to sacrifice.
Of course, of
Right.
course. When you're in a downturn, you cannot run with a certain operating cost base. You've got to rationalize and optimize your costs. If it means reducing headcount, it's a difficult decision to do business. So sometimes the decisions are tough, and that's why having a good corporate governance allows that decision making to be easier. It's not sitting on you, just the founder.
Exactly.
It's sitting on a group of people who will give you insights into the relative benefits of actually cutting your headcount or cutting some discretionary spending. Yes, discretionary spending. You may, like she said, office party. Maybe every month you do office party. So by the end of the year, you've done 12 office parties. Yeah, probably it's now time to get rid of 7 of those office parties and save cash, which means that when you conserve the cash, you are not as reliant on bringing in totally new business all the time, which is difficult to get in a new,
Difficult,
in a challenging environment. Okay, so there are a host of decisions that need to be, one, evaluated and then taken to position the business at a place where you can afford to lose some market share. Look, market share, it sounds very cliche when we say we're going to grow market share, we'll continue growing market share. It's not a linear function. It is not a linear function. Okay, it ebbs and it flows, market share. So there'll be a time when your market share will be lower. There'll be a time when your market share is higher. Your competitors may drop out and increase your market share, or more may come in and drop your market share. What are you going to do? You're going to still have to take those hard decisions, cut costs to compete, okay? Or spend more money, more marketing dollars to position your product. But the question is, for every dollar spent, are you making $2 from the marketing spend? That's my view. If I spend $1 on marketing, I've got to make 2 back to justify the spend. If I'm not going to make 2 from it, then it's not worth my spending, so that I conserve the cash.
Yomi, I want to talk to the regulators and SME support agencies whilst we bring our thoughts to a close. It's challenging times. We are saying the SMEs should find ways to win, but these regulators, support agencies do play a role. What should they be looking to do? What areas should they be looking to intervene? What support mechanisms must they be considering to put in place to help make our SMEs internationally and globally competitive, or at least break out of that shell and want to become that?
So there's a couple of things. In addition to internal examination, which we've talked about at length for companies, no man is an island. You always need to come together with other people in your industry to lobby the regulators for right, appropriate, effective, growth-oriented regulations. The regulators also need the support of these industry players in policy formulation, and also needs their cooperation with execution of these policies. So it's very, very important, whether it's unions or just a group of key players in an industry, to always engage with the regulators formally and informally, just to keep the conversation going. So I don't see regulators as the enemy, which often you would find in the SME space, that they're always coming here, they're always looking for one thing or the other.
They find you and come for your money.
Exactly. Then let's spin the conversation and look at them as collaborators with us, and people that we need to continuously engage and speak to each other. Just the way I would say this with some caution. Your mother-in-law is not always your friend, but it's better to be her friend than to be at loggerheads with her. So those conversations need to be going. And also, I will say this: there has to be active engagements with financial providers as well as a unit. I will talk about the whole bond debt situation in Ghana has made financial institutions shift a little bit from investing in government securities to start to look at the real sector. But there's a dearth of knowledge on how these industries work, the nuances, and it's also important to come together to speak to them. So two groups of people, the regulators and the financial providers.
and that's where Sarpong Capital is very useful, where we can articulate your industry or various industries to some of these financial services providers in a way that allows them to understand it better. We speak their language as well, so it's easy for us to communicate with them. We also can help you with our toolkit on winning. Yeah, we have a toolkit on winning that we can deploy to assess your business and ask all of those hard questions, and also ask that identify what the appropriate responses to those questions ought to be. It's a collaborative process that we can engage in. So all in all, come to Sarpong Capital and then we'll help you.
I'm always excited when I hear this type of message from organizations such as yourself, because we need more external intermediaries that are willing and ready to help SMEs succeed. So it's very exciting that you do this, and definitely the hope is that most businesses will avail themselves to services like this. Should SMEs forget external support and try and find a way to win themselves? Is that what they should be doing?
Should they
Forget external support and try and find it.
external support like how?
External reliance, looking up to the regulators, government to come in and build them out.
Well, I wouldn't say bailouts. Bailouts need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So where there's a need or requirement for a bailout, of course, if it's not necessary, then you don't need to do it, or you don't look for the handout all the time. Certainly, making sure that you engage with your regulators and your peers is always the best way to actually get things done. If the regulator is always difficult to approach, you come together as a group and then approach the regulator as the group, as opposed to an individual company, so you are not singled out or anything of the sort. And that's why associations like the AGI are very important when it comes to dealing with the tax authorities or the specific industry regulators that may exist. So always working with a trade association or a trade body is always very important, so you can get the best lobbying skill.
Based on the current macroeconomic outlook and the predictions, is there any hope for the local SMEs?
There is absolutely hope for the local SMEs. It also depends on what sort of business you're in, but the key questions need to be asked. The research needs to be done. For one, things like fast-moving consumer goods will always thrive, but the key questions need to be asked. There is hope. It might look bleak at the moment, but surely we shall overcome.
Of course,
there's light at the end of this tunnel.
There's light at the end of every tunnel. It just seems far off, but
Right.
It's always there. You can see to there. Once you can see the light, you can always approach it. It may take a while, but you definitely get there. And I do believe that Ghana we're in a position, we've been here before. This is not the first time we've been here. Well, it seems like it's the first time for many people, but we've been here many, many times. Talk of the early 2000s, getting into the mid 2000s, early 2010s, we were there, mid 2010s, going 2015.
Banking crisis.
It's not a new thing. It's at this pace, it's actually cyclical. So I do suggest SMEs start having an approach where it already builds a downturn into their plans. Look, where you can't plan, you cannot do stuff without a plan. And it's very important that SMEs get this notion right. They've got to always have a plan. You can have a plan on how things can go wrong and how you're going to recover, or you can have a plan to just continue building, but have a plan of some sort. Okay, have a plan, because sometimes the lightning strikes twice in the same place.
Right.
So have a plan. Have a plan and you can win in challenging times.
Yes, as my old school teacher said, failing to plan is planning to fail.
Thank you, Kofi. Thank you, Yomi. Thank you, Sarpong Capital. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.